Hola mis amigos, this is the Prince of Macedon doing a commentary video for Napoleon Total War multiplayer. I command the Spanish and my opponent is Ice LGA in command of Portugal. We will look at my Spanish army first and I will just list the units for you so I don't have to bother pronouncing the names of these exotic units. And I will also show you some close-ups in case you want to see what they look like. These are my guerrillas, those are my skirmish type units. And I really like the way they look because it makes them look really rugged for the Spanish guerrillas. Alright, let's go look at the Portuguese army commanded by Ice LGA. And he has a very similar setup as myself. He has 4 skirmishers, just like myself, but he's using tiradores, which are slightly better than my guerrillas because they have a range advantage. And look at these units, these are militia units. And once I saw his militia units, and once I saw his grenadiers, I was pretty confident that I knew what he was going to try to do. But meanwhile, you can see that my opponent's tiradores have got off the first shots on my skirmishers, because as I said, they have superior range over my guerrillas. But as I was saying, I'll talk more about the militia and the grenadiers later. As for now, we are skirmishing. And this is how a lot of Napoleonic battles unfolded. Basically, both armies would send out skirmishers, and throughout the entire day, it would be the skirmishers and the artillerymen keeping up the sustained fire. But this kind of action would be briefly interrupted by short bursts of action from the main infantry, and also from attacks from the cavalry. And it's very interesting to read about. But anyways, back to this battle. You can see I have brought up my guerrillas close enough to exchange fire with his tiradores. And my opponent brought up his infantry, and that is the equivalent of my line infantry. And if you noticed on the unit composition list, you can see that my opponent has more horsemen than I do. Yeah, my opponent has 5 units of Portuguese cav, and I have 4 units of horsemen myself. But the good thing is, 2 of my horsemen are elite, so that should help balance out the deficit in numbers. Anyways, this is what my opponent's trying to do. You see him massing the militia and grenadiers on his left flank. You can see that he's going to very soon charge my right flank. And in response, I'm going to peel off one of my line infantrymen from my left flank, and I'm going to bring it over to my right. And I'm also going to bring my general unit to my right flank to meet the expected charge. But this is what I was saying earlier when I saw my opponent's militia and grenadiers. Basically, the militia is going to precede the advance of the grenadiers, and they are going to soak up all of my musket fire. And while my guys are reloading, the grenadiers are going to pop up and toss their grenades, and then that'll blast my flank open. That's the hope of my opponent anyways. But as Napoleon Bonaparte said himself, it's all in the execution. So we will see if my opponent can execute his attack well. But I was definitely ready for this threat because, as I said, you can just see my opponent massing his troops on his flank opposite my right flank. So I knew something was going to happen on this flank, and I knew because of his unit composition how to expect his attack to unfold. Anyways, I'm bringing up more of my troops, and you can see I got my general in the vicinity. And I lost some of my guerrillas, and that was to be expected because my opponent was using superior skirmishers than myself. But alright, here we're going to watch my opponent's attack unfold. So those guys running at me right now, those are his militiamen. And my guys are going to take aim and gun him down. My opponent's hope is basically that his militiamen last long enough to soak up my musket fire, upon which time my opponent's grenadiers will pop up behind him and launch their grenades at me. But basically the militiamen are just meat shields. So we're going to see the effect of his grenades, and you can see I brought my line infantry over on this flank already. And let's see how destructive his grenades are. So they're going to wind up and they're going to pitch their crap at my guys. And my guys probably could have just caught that and threw it back. But in any case, the grenade damage hardly did anything to my troops. And some people are saying that the grenade needs to be patched so that the grenade's as effective as it is in Empire Total War. And yeah, I guess that's something that they need to address because right now the grenadiers are almost useless. And meanwhile, my opponent's attack on my right flank failed, so he's going to respond by sending his horsemen down my right flank to follow up on his first attack. And I'm going to countercharge his horsemen with my own horsemen. So now I will treat you to a close-up here. You can see his Portuguese cav and my elite horsemen as well. And they both have very sweet uniforms. And if you have a look at my infantry, you can see that I've taken a lot of damage from my opponent's initial musket fire. But now my opponent is going to start retreating backwards. He's going to reform his line. And you'll notice a lot of people do this online, is that they'll start to reform backwards, hoping to sucker you in. And when your chaotic line meets his reformed line, then your guys will easily get butchered. But in any case, I knew what my opponent was planning. And over here, you can see that I pretty much destroyed most of his Portuguese cav on this wing. And I'm going to maintain my advance. You can see on the minimap that I've been creeping up steadily. Actually the red one on the minimap. In any case, one of my units did get isolated during my opponent's retreat, his tactical retreat. So on that account, my opponent was successful in isolating one of my units. But for the most part, I wasn't really too affected by his tactic of retreating backwards. But I'm going to maintain the pressure though, and you can see once again my opponent is going to reform his line backwards. And over here, I think those militiamen are probably out of ammunition. If not, my opponent's doing something with them. So he's going to charge into my elite units here. And of course, that's not going to go too well for his militiamen. Alright, so what is this? I'm bringing up my skirmishers to harass my opponent's regular infantry. And you can see my line cav right here. I'm not going to engage these guys in combat because I'm afraid it'll ruin their sweet looking jackets. But my opponent's taking his remaining Portuguese cav, and he's going to charge my flank here. And this was another effect of my opponent's tactical withdrawal, is that I pushed too far forward with some of my units. So here comes his Portuguese cav, he's going to run my guerrillas over. At about this point I was saying, no me gusto, but he kept charging anyways. The only thing I could do was bring up my line infantry and hopefully try to scare them off with my musket fire. So he is taking some damage right now, but he's going to scoot out of there. And this will take him towards my right flank, where he's going to charge into my advancing flank over here. And in response, I'm just going to put my guys in a square, and that'll force my opponent to withdraw from this area, otherwise they'll get chopped down from musket fire. So there go his Portuguese cav in search of a new target. And my men just shot that horse down. Not sure why they did that, but the fight will continue. And you can see my opponent has his skirmishers right next to my square, so I'm going to take my men out of square and start blasting them at point blank range. And I'm advancing down his flank here, and you can see his tiradors don't stand up too well against regular line infantry. Alright, so my opponent attacked another one of my infantry units, but I formed my guys into a square over on this side too. And that's actually going to rout his Portuguese cav from the battlefield. So now it's basically his infantry versus my infantry and my cav. He still has his general unit though. In any case, I see this really weak line of infantry, and I'm just going to run them down with my horsemen. So you can see his morale, it's already red, so that means they're about to break. And finally they break. And with that penetration right there, I'm going to get my cav, and I'm going to put it behind his line here. And with this maneuver, I'm going to prevent him from withdrawing anymore, because honestly, I got kind of tired of chasing him on the battlefield. So here I am maneuvering my horsemen behind his main body, and basically I just want to put a stop to my opponent withdrawing every single time I try to engage. So, here he is, he's trying to withdraw, and I'm just going to smack into them as they retreat. And let's see if they can maintain their advance backwards. So my guy's going to chop him down, and that line breaks. So now maybe my opponent will think twice before withdrawing again. And since my horsemen are already there, and since his guys aren't in square yet, I'm just going to continue the attack with my horsemen. And he is starting to form a square, but because their morale is so low, I don't think they'll be able to form a square by the time my horsemen get done with them. But this will show you some nice close-ups of the action here. Those are my elite horsemen, and I don't want to pronounce their name because I probably mispronounce it. But my opponent sees the futility of retreating anymore, so he's going to advance with his infantry. But you can see my opponent is starting to charge with his general unit, and of course my elite horsemen are going to accept this charge. So we're going to smack into these guys. And this is pretty much the climax of the battle. And if you ever have trouble following my battles, you can watch on the minimap as well. You can see what's going on. In any case, these are the results, and hope you guys enjoyed this battle between Spain and Portugal.